our client was in a really awful wreck, but he wasn't, life flighted away. He wasn't in a coma or anything. But within 1 week of the wreck, he went to the grocery store and he was gone for 3 hours, only got 3 things when he had a list of 20 things to get. Within another week, he got lost in his own closet and had to punch holes in the wall to find his way out.
The Concussion Center proudly presents Talk-N-Headz, a podcast based on all things related to head injuries. This is not just a show about concussion. In this series, we take an in-depth look at the brain and its function specifically after there is trauma. Hosted by Brent Jones, Antonio Walden, and Dr. Robert Allen, Talk-N-Headz was created to give a realistic perspective to head injuries. So sit back, relax, and let us fill your head with brain knowledge.
All right, here we are again. The gang is all back together. Welcome to, I believe, episode 8 of Talk-N-Headz. You have the head honcho, the CEO, the best hair in the game, Mr. Brent Jones is back with us today. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on again.
Second in command, we have the CD, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Dr. Rob Allen. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, my man. How are you?
Second best hair in the office.
I don't know. I think I've got an award in my office regarding that.
Yeah, but that's only because they gave me a different one.
Is it? Okay.
Now you guys see why they haven't been here in the last couple of weeks. It's been a slobber knocker.
We've been bickering.
And then you have myself. I am the market. I am the marketing executive for the Concussion Center, Antonio. And today we are so happy to have with us one of the best attorneys in the game, especially when it comes to things like TBIs, head injuries, trial law. Basically, he just loves to argue. Thank you, sir, for coming in. Attorney Drew Gilliland is with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Yeah, that's close enough. Gilliland.
Okay, you don't know how long I've been pronouncing that, so.
Much better than most people do.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sitting down with us today. So let's get into a conversation.
I do want to add, I don't argue with my wife. That's the only person I want to argue with.
She
wins all the arguments.
Absolutely.
So does my daughter.
That's why you're
You
still
argue
married.
with mine?
No.
Brent, I got a nice new sofa for you, sir.
Oh, dude, okay. Nice. Perfect. Can't wait.
She doesn't know where I live. Let's keep it that way. Oh man, let's
You
get
do
into
really have nice hair.
Thank you. Yeah. We actually, it was kind of a prerequisite for us to start this thing together.
It's a business partner application.
Drew, don't do that to him, please.
Well, you have nice hair too, Antonio.
You just like this. Oh man, so something really interesting happened today, and I think it'll be a good jumping off point for us. So we got news that Bob Saget passed away, and there is a, I guess, potential head injury behind that.
Yeah.
So first off, rest in peace to Bob Saget. I grew up on the guy. His stand-up comedy is some of the best I've seen in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally different from the Full House guy.
Right.
Yeah. Oh man. But and we'll have Dr. Allen speak to this a little bit. But he was telling us that happens a lot. Is that there could be potential trauma to the cerebral, and then someone just lays down and just doesn't wake up, which is really interesting and really brings back to light how important it is for us to understand head injuries and their impact. So, Drew, tell us a little bit about the impact you've seen of head injuries here lately in personal cases and then in the legal aspect as well.
Yeah, so, well, again, thanks for having me on, and thank you for doing this,
No problem.
this podcast. It's really important that we're getting this information out to the public. Just to give you a brief background, so both of my mom's parents died from traumatic brain injuries. They had slip and falls and ended up having brain bleeds, and they both died. So I really care about this particular injury, and it's unfortunately not very well understood among personal injury attorneys, although we're getting better at understanding it. But yeah, I did see that article about Bob Saget, and I'm actually from Orlando, and I stay at the hotel that when I go down there, we take my daughter to Disney. And if you want to go bankrupt, by the way, get a daughter and have her fall in love with Disney. I buy stock in Disney.
Yeah, I know.
Too late. My Mario loves Minnie Mouse.
Yeah, okay, all right, well, you're done. But we stay at that hotel and love it. It's a great hotel, and I'm not saying anything bad about the hotel. But their bathroom floors are made of marble, and the rest of the rooms are carpeted. And so what it seems like happened is he probably slipped and fell and hit his head and didn't think much of it and just laid down to to help with the dizziness, and he ended up passing away. But we're still waiting for more details to come out. But it is sad because like you, I grew up watching Full House, and then I got to see the other side of Bob Saget and his real stand-up comedy. And if you haven't seen the movie The Aristocrats, it's worth watching.
Oh yeah, it's a cool movie.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So Dr. Allen, you were saying earlier that happens a lot when someone may just hit the back of their heads and not think too much about it, and then some adverse effects. Can you educate us on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it could be through a variety of different ways, but one of the ways we see this happen, and Bob Saget's an example. Liam Neeson's wife, she hit the back of her head when she was skiing and died that way. And in a lot of these cases, you can affect your cerebellum, which is part of your brainstem, and it's all your fine motor control, and it helps control your ability to move, right? But it also is going to be partially in control of things like heart rate and your breathing, your kind of things that happen subconsciously. So we see that in some of these cases when there's an injury to the brainstem, to the cerebellum, those functions just stop. And so obviously your heart's not beating, you're not breathing, you're gonna die. Other cases it could be a brain bleed. And surprisingly enough, blood is actually toxic to brain tissue. Which yeah, I know it's kind of crazy to think about, right? But so there are different ways that it can affect different parts of it.
Yeah.
So that's what you've got a variety of different things, cascading issues that can happen when it comes to something like that. You could, if there was a subdural hematoma, a variety of different things that could happen with it. But it's always sad. It's always scary when we see those kind of things pop up.
Yeah. Oh wow.
And I think just for the news to come out and people to try to understand, you said, you mentioned a little bit earlier, is trying to shine a little bit more light and a little bit more education on that, why someone who hit their head can have continued cognitive function and then lay down to what they think is rest, and then potentially pass away from something like a head injury. I think that's also hard for persons to maybe kind of understand why that would even happen, why there's that delayed issue. So definitely sad to hear of the passing of him, and worse to hear of how it happened. Want to make sure that we're doing our best to kind of shine a light on some of these issues and why head injury is so important to take a look at.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no.
So I was going to say, in the world that I live in, doing these personal injury cases, a lot of what we see are what are called mild traumatic brain injuries. There's three different kinds: mild, moderate, and severe. And the severe is always pretty obvious.
Yeah.
I had a negligent security case where someone was shot in the head and he lived, but that's an example of a severe traumatic brain injury.
For sure.
And then the moderate ones are that's kind of a gray area where you have loss of consciousness, but not too much. And then mild is when you really don't have loss of consciousness, you just have an alteration of consciousness.
Right.
And yesterday we got a case referred to us from an attorney. The client was in a really bad wreck, and we just spent 5 minutes going through the River Mead questionnaire and went through his symptoms. No one had done this before. And sure enough, he has, all the symptoms of a traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
And the case just totally changed because his medical care is gonna be much different.
Yeah.
In the future, he's gonna need care. And so, I know that a lot of attorneys assume that you have to hit your head to have a traumatic brain injury. That's not true. And so I'm trying to learn as much as I can about this particular injury because it really does have, devastating consequences.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to sit on a webinar you and attorney Nick Snyder did around a case that you recently settled. That had a TBI associated with it. Tell us a little bit about that case.
Yeah, so that's a really good example. My client was in a car wreck. She was hit head on, and she wasn't diagnosed. She was diagnosed with a mild traumatic brain injury about 2.5 years after the wreck, and that's actually pretty common because most people don't understand. They just think that my brain is kind of messing up. It's due to age. It's due to stress. It's due to these other things. So I ended up talking to her mom, and I said, what's going on with your daughter? Like, what have you noticed? And she said that after this wreck, her daughter moved home with her, and her daughter's been independent her whole life. Her daughter was 42 years old at the time, and the daughter literally moved into her own room and didn't leave for like 8 months.
Oh, wow.
They had to cut all her hair out because she didn't shower.
Wow.
And that's not normal.
No.
But they didn't know what was going on. They just thought she was depressed. Well, as it turns out, no, she had a mild traumatic brain injury, and the insurance company didn't believe us, and so we were going to trial 3 days before trial, and they paid the 1.25 million that we demanded.
Wow.
Because eventually they realized that this was serious.
I think one of the hard things for people to wrap their head around when it comes to the terminology of mild traumatic brain injuries, the mild part.
Yeah.
Just because it's quote unquote mild from how we look at it, doesn't mean the effects of it are. Right. In this case specifically, right? You've got someone that's life is completely changed, and it's 2.5 years down the road.
Yeah.
So now they're in a chronic state.
Right.
And so it's not mild in any sense of the word.
Right.
But it's just that what the category from a medical perspective it fits in.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And so I think that's where we call them the miserable minority of patients that make it outside of a month that still have symptoms of a TBI. Right. And by that point though, we're dealing with a different animal.
Yeah.
We're dealing with a different animal, that 10 to 15% of patients. So I it's good that you understand that just because it has the term mild in it doesn't mean that it's actually
right.
It's something they can easily get over.
It's
right?
very unfortunate terminology.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
And it makes up, what was the last statistics of all traumatic brain injuries? Mild is 85%.
Something, 75, 85%.
CDC is always changing their statistics around that as they get more data in, but.
Well, the rough part about it, right, is we're probably severely underdiagnosing these because most people get up, symptoms are gone within 2 to 4 weeks, right? By definition,
right,
a concussion should wrap up within about 30 days.
Yeah.
Symptoms should resolve within about 30 days.
Yeah.
So we're probably not seeing a lot of these people come through.
Right.
And what long-term effects will they potentially have?
Exactly.
Outside that category. So I agree. I think the mild terminology can throw persons off, and certainly concussions that's synonymous with mild traumatic brain injury. So being able to get those patients in and being evaluated is extremely important, especially as you mentioned in the case where 2 years later.
Yeah.
These things happen. We've seen that in patients we've had here in our clinic.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you see it with my godfather he was in the Navy SEALs, and he's talked about how the veterans that come back from Iraq, they don't suffer like traditional head injuries. They have blast injuries, and there have been veterans that have committed suicide. I mean, it's a known problem.
Yeah.
That their brains are just racked from.
Yeah, another thing and we see it a lot here too, PTSD.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
A great example. My father-in-law, he's a Marine veteran from Vietnam.
Right.
And he was initially diagnosed with Alzheimer's because of the effects from his PTSD.
Wow.
Which is what it actually was.
Yeah.
Right. So you see that the anxiety and the phobia and the stress that comes from this, the emotional changes to people, it's not just I'm having a panic attack today, or oh, I feel sad.
Right.
This is affecting him from a cognitive function perspective.
Right.
So a neurologist diagnosed him with Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
Because of the issues that he was having from PTSD from Vietnam, as well as likely some blast injuries.
Right.
So these are the things that we're starting to learn and starting to get out in the population, and for people to really understand better.
Yeah.
The VA has been very good about about leading a lot of the charge in that realm, but it's not enough yet.
No, not at all.
So Drew, let me ask you a question. Do you normally see this uphill battle when trying to educate juries and courts and judges on head injuries and how they impact a person to get the recovery needed for that person?
So yes. So my audience is, insurance adjusters and then everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Insurance adjusters typically they never really believe that there's a traumatic brain injury, but that's also kind of their job. I was
going to ask you, do they really not believe, or are they trained?
I think they're probably trained not to believe. So it's.
I imagine there's a handbook that says, when the attorney says this, you say this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's either your client's treating too much, not enough, the bills are too high, the bills aren't high enough, all that stuff. And so it doesn't seem like insurance adjusters really believe it unless it's a severe, obvious traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
I mean, I got associated on a case where our client was in a really awful wreck, but he wasn't, life flighted away. He wasn't in a coma or anything. But within 1 week of the wreck, he went to the grocery store and he was gone for 3 hours, only got 3 things when he had a list of 20 things to get. Within another week, he got lost in his own closet and had to punch holes in the wall to find his way out. And we sent the attorney that associated me sent a demand on this case. The policy limits were $250,000, and they didn't pay it. They thought he just had dementia. And I deposed their expert, and I said, well, isn't that quick of a cognitive decline more consistent with the traumatic brain injury? And he said, yeah. I was like, okay, thanks, we're done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and now our demand is, I don't know, 20 million. So they're hopefully regretting their decision.
I would say so.
But that's and his case is a little weird because I've never seen somebody have a cognitive decline like that unless they had a severe traumatic brain injury. But weird things happen.
Yeah,
you do.
And you don't get dementia in a week.
No.
It's not how it works.
So that leads me into part 2 of my question. What can we as providers do in conjunction or association with attorneys like yourself to better, equip the industry to handle this as it should be?
So I like what you all do. You make subjective complaints objective.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that helps a lot. Because I have clients who have come here and they've had abnormal tests, and it's hard to argue with these tests when you have abnormal eye movements and things like that. You can't fake that. So I think that's very helpful. Whether the insurance companies start buying into it or start paying attention, I don't know. But I do think that juries are way more receptive to it now, and mediators. I think everyone is more receptive to it, especially with the movie like Concussion, and there was even a professional wrestler,
Chris Benoit.
Yeah, here in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think she died by suicide.
Well, yeah, he killed his family and then killed himself.
Oh, so the one I'm talking about is a female wrestler.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll look it up when the show's over. And but she actually donated her brain to science.
Well, it's like Junior Seau.
Yeah,
he shot himself in the heart, right?
Yeah. And you see it because he knew something wrong with his head.
I know. I mean, same with like Aaron Hernandez. They did an autopsy,
Yeah.
right, on his brain. After the fact.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean.
And their MRIs are normal.
Yeah.
That's the wild thing.
Yeah.
Totally normal MRIs.
Yeah.
And you can't see the damage. So one of the things that I like to do is I'll show exhibits in my depositions to the treating providers, and I'll say, is this a fair and accurate representation of what, it looks like when you have axonal shearing, when you have, this kind of trauma? Because we know that's what happens. We can't see it.
Can't see it on an image, yeah.
Right. So I like to use medical exhibits to make the point that, just because you can't see it, we do know for a fact this is what's happening.
Right.
And so it kind of helps the jury to visualize what the injury is, which is, I think, really important.
Gotcha.
Well, it's to take it, bring it out of the ether and actually show something,
Right.
as opposed to just talking about these super complex, vague,
Right.
Medical terminology.
Yeah.
Most people understand.
Imagine there's a ferry, but the ferry's been cut in half.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
it's like you can actually show it what it looks like. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that helps a lot. So I hope that that insurance companies start taking these more seriously. But I think, and I understand why they don't, because a lot of it is subjective.
Yeah.
That's why what you do is so important, because you make this subjective objective.
Yeah.
Now, whether they're going to start paying attention, who knows?
Yeah.
I would think with as much buzz or as vogue as head injuries have become, good, bad, or indifferent, at least maybe the media does assist in good ways, correct? For unfortunately, usually at the expense of others, but reality is maybe it does help shine a light a little bit on something that we felt for a long time has been underdiagnosed, not misdiagnosed, because I think there's a big difference between the two, but underdiagnosed.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you and what you're doing to identify the patients that have these issues. Yeah, it truly is, because as you've probably seen with several of your larger cases, sometimes it's hard for them to explain what they're going on. All they can do is tell you how they feel, right? And then you have to take, either see actions or, take information from loved ones, etc., about how his or her spouse is acting and acting differently, ending up at the grocery store for 3 hours with only 3 items, etc. So
yeah, and I think it's necessary in these cases. You have to speak to friends and family. Like the client that I had, whose case I recently settled, she wasn't going to tell me that she locked herself in her bedroom. I mean, she's probably self-conscious of that.
Absolutely.
And so it helps to have other people reporting. And it's like somebody with Alzheimer's. I mean, typically the person with Alzheimer's, and both of my great-grandparents had it, they don't recognize it.
Absolutely,
It's the family that recognizes it first.
yeah.
So, I think the friends and family are critical, but yeah, I'm happy that you all are doing this and getting this information out there.
Yeah. Well, Drew, we appreciate you sitting down with us today. Before we head out, let everybody know how they can find you, social media.
Sure.
All that good stuff.
So if anybody, I'm happy to share anything I have. If you want to call me, my cell phone is 407-718-2128. On Instagram, I'm the Florida Georgia lawyer, and I'm at the Nick Schneider Law Firm in Georgia, and I'm with Bear Legal Solutions in Florida. And feel free to reach out anytime. I'm happy to help.
Well, hey, we're glad you came into the center today and sat down with us. We'll let you get back out there and keep fighting for head injuries.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I'm going to have to learn how to make my hair as nice as yours.
Yeah.
Well, we have a hairstylist.
We actually we call this place Concussion Cut and Color. So,
That's all right. Have a lady come in every Tuesday and Thursday.
yeah, right after we finish eating drinks.
Your brains,
Why wasn't I made aware of this?
Will you tell us
For obvious reasons, Antonio. Very obvious reasons.
Well, hey, I'm going to get mine cut and colored. So
All right.
We'll catch you guys next time on Talk-N-Headz.
Thank you for listening to Talk-N-Headz. This podcast has been brought to you by the Concussion Center. We appreciate the opportunity to fill your brain with some new information regarding head injuries. If you have any additional topics you would like us to cover, please reach out to us on our various social media platforms at the Concussion Center, or hit us up on our website at concussionctr.com.